Mr. Obiora, look this way!
They said she smelled like the streets. They said no man would ever choose a homeless girl. They were wrong. On the coldest night of her life, a stranger sat beside her and asked a question no one had ever asked before.
Some people just don't belong here.
Will you marry me tomorrow?
Will you marry me tomorrow? She laughed. She thought he was crazy. She didn't. No, he was one of the richest men in the country. He didn't marry her because he loved her. He married her to destroy the woman who once broke his heart. But neither of them knew the homeless girl he chose as his revenge was about to become the greatest blessing of his life. And before this marriage was over, one shocking truth would change everything. Welcome back to SM Stories. If you're new here, we bring you powerful, emotional stories every single week. Stories about love, betrayal, revenge, and justice that finally comes. If this story touches you, subscribe now because this one has more twists than anything we've told before. Now, let's begin. The rain in Port Harcourt that night was the kind that soaks into your bones. Chidera Nwasu sat under the awning of the Aurelia Grand Hotel, arms wrapped around her knees, watching her own breath turn to fog in the cold air. 3 weeks ago, she had a bed. 3 weeks ago, she had a stepmother who at least pretended to care. Now she had a torn bag, one photograph of her late mother, and nowhere else to go. "You can't sit here," a security guard barked, tapping his baton against the pavement near her feet. "This is not a shelter. Move before Madam sees you and complains to management." "Please," Dira whispered. "Just until the rain stops." "You people always say, just until," the guard sneered. "Then you never leave." Inside the hotel, gold chandeliers dripped light onto 300 guests. It was the engagement party of the year. Chiamaka Ume, the city's favorite socialite, was marrying Barrister Douglas Okonjo, son of a sitting senator. Chiamaka stood at the center of the ballroom, diamonds catching the light, her laughter sharp and rehearsed. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass, "and to leaving the past exactly where it belongs, behind us." Nobody in that room knew that 5 years earlier she had said something crueler to another man in a much smaller room with far less applause. "You will never be anything, Kelechi. I need a man who can give me a life, not one who counts his last naira before buying bread." That man was standing 40 feet away from her right now in a plain jacket, a paper cup of tea in his hand, completely unnoticed by the crowd he technically owned the building for. Kelechi Obiora didn't come tonight to celebrate. He came because Emeka warned him Chiamaka planned to mention his name on stage, as a joke, as proof of how far she'd risen above boys like him. He didn't wait to hear it. He walked out into the rain instead. And that is where destiny placed a homeless woman directly in his path. He almost walked past her. Almost. Something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she sat perfectly straight, despite the cold, like a woman refusing to let the world see her break. "They will chase you away in 10 minutes, he said. "The guards here don't like witnesses to other people's happiness." Dara looked up, startled. "Are you going to chase me too?" "No," Kelechi said, sitting down on the wet pavement beside her, ruining his own trousers without a second thought. "I know exactly how it feels to be something people want to sweep away." They sat in silence for a moment, two strangers under the same dripping awning. "What's your name?" he asked. Dara. "If you like." "Dara," he repeated. "Tell me something. If a man offered you a way out of this, right now, tonight, would you take it, even if it wasn't love?" Dara studied him carefully. He didn't look rich. His shoes were scuffed. But something in his eyes didn't match the rest of him. Steady, unafraid, unbothered by the rain soaking through his jacket. "Depends what the offer costs me," she said. "Marriage," Kelechi said simply. "Tomorrow morning. A real wedding, a real ring, a roof over your head, food, safety. In exchange, you let the world believe you are my wife." Dara actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're either drunk or insane, maybe both," Kelechi admitted. But I am also serious. Why me? She asked. You don't know me. Because, Kelechi said quietly, there is a woman inside that hotel who once told me I would never be anything. Tomorrow, I want her to see that a man she called nothing is now a husband, happily married, moved on, untouched by her memory. Dara's jaw tightened. So I'm a weapon. You're a woman who deserves a bed and a hot meal tonight, Kelechi said. What I need from you is simple. What you need from me is simpler. Nobody has to pretend this is more than a business arrangement. Dara looked down at her torn bag, at the photograph of her mother peeking out of it, at the rain that showed no signs of stopping. If I say yes, she said slowly, you will never touch me without my permission. You will never disrespect me in private the way the world may disrespect me in public. I have lost my home, my family, and my mother. I will not lose my dignity too. You have my word, Kelechi said, and I keep my word even when it costs me. She didn't know yet how true that sentence would become. By morning, a homeless woman would wear a wedding ring bought by one of the richest men in the country, and neither of them would know they had just lit a fire neither could control. The registry office was small, fluorescent lit, and smelled like old paper. No family, no flowers, just a bored clerk stamping documents between yawns. Next, the clerk said, not even glancing up, Dara wore a borrowed white dress from Kelechi's driver's wife, too big at the shoulders, too tight at the waist, held together with safety pins Dara had done herself in the hotel bathroom that morning. Kelechi wore the same plain jacket from the night before. You may sign, the clerk said, sliding the paper across. Dara's hand trembled as she signed her name. Kelechi noticed. You can still change your mind, he said quietly. I don't run from decisions, Dara said, even hard ones. He signed his name beneath hers, not Kelechi Obiora, chairman, but simply Kelechi O, a small, deliberate lie of omission that would cost him dearly later. Outside the registry office, Emeka waited in an unremarkable sedan, not the convoy of black SUVs parked 2 streets away, out of sight. Sir, Emeka whispered as they climbed in. Are you certain about this? I have never been more certain of anything less thought through in my life, Kelechi admitted. Dara overheard him and frowned but said nothing. She had learned, in 3 weeks of homelessness, that some sentences are not worth chasing. She had just married a stranger to survive the night. She had no idea she had just married the reason half the business elite in the country trembled when his name was mentioned. And somewhere across the city, a woman who once destroyed him was about to hear the news that would break her perfectly practiced smile. Kelechi drove her not to a mansion, but to a modest 2-bedroom flat on the quiet side of town. A property he kept precisely for moments like this, when he needed the world, and sometimes himself, to remember what ordinary felt like. This is small, he said, almost embarrassed. It has a roof, Dara said. That already makes it a palace. That night, he gave her the only bedroom and took the couch without being asked. You don't have to do that, she said. I told you I would never disrespect you, Kelechi said. A man's word means nothing if it bends the moment nobody is watching. Over the following days, Dara found work washing dishes at a small restaurant nearby. Kelechi left every morning in the same plain jacket, returning each evening with quiet stories about managing properties for a difficult businessman, never once mentioning that the difficult businessman was his own reflection in the mirror. In the evenings, they sat outside on 2 plastic chairs, sharing roasted corn from a woman down the street. Tell me about your mother, Kelechi said one night. Dara's eyes softened. She used to say hardship was just life testing whether your spine was made of glass or steel. She died still believing mine was steel. She was right, Kelechi said softly. And you? Dara asked. Who taught you to be this patient with a stranger? Kelechi hesitated. Someone taught me the opposite lesson once. I'm still unlearning it. Something passed between them in that silence. Not romance yet, but the first thread of something neither of them had agreed to feel. Neither of them noticed it happening. But somewhere between the roasted corn and the quiet nights, revenge was slowly, quietly, losing the war to something Kelechi hadn't planned for at all. News moves fast in a city built on gossip. Ijeoma, Dara's stepsister, heard the rumor first, that her abandoned stepsister was now married, of all things, and rushed to see it with her own eyes, hoping for a fresh reason to laugh. She found them at the small restaurant where Dara worked, sharing a plate of jollof rice on Dara's break. "Chidera," Ijeoma said loudly, drawing eyes from nearby tables. "Look at you, married. To this?" She gestured at Kelechi's simple clothes with theatrical pity. "Mama Beatrice will be so relieved you finally found your level." "Ijeoma," Dara started. No, let me look properly," Ijeoma continued, circling their table like a vulture. "A washer of dishes and a man who dresses like her coworker. How romantic." She turned to the other customers, raising her voice further. "This is the girl we had to throw out of the house. Now see her, married to a nobody, working as a dishwasher. God truly has a sense of humor." The restaurant fell into an uncomfortable hush. Some customers laughed behind their hands. Dara's cheeks burned red, her fork frozen midway to her mouth. "You embarrassed this family when you refused the marriage Mama arranged," Ijeoma said, quieter now, cruelly precise. "Now look at you. You traded a rich man's proposal for a rich man's driver, apparently." Dara stood slowly, chin lifted despite the shame crawling up her neck. "I would rather wash dishes beside a kind man than sit at a rich table beside people who threw me into the rain." Ijeoma smirked and walked away, satisfied, heels clicking against the tile. Kelechi had said nothing throughout the entire exchange, his hands clenched tight beneath the table, jaw locked in fury he didn't dare release in public. Not yet. That night, walking home in silence, Dara finally broke. "I only wanted peace," she whispered, tears sliding down her face. "Why does everyone keep reminding me what I don't have?" Kelechi stopped walking. He turned to face her fully for the first time since the humiliation. "You have something they will never have," he said. "You have a spine that doesn't bend for an audience. That is worth more than every insult they threw at you tonight." But somewhere in that small, painful moment, Kelechi made a silent decision, one that had nothing to do with revenge anymore, and everything to do with protecting the only person who had ever made his fake marriage feel real. Chiamaka Ume did not simply hear rumors. She collected them, sharpened them, and used them like weapons. That was how she had built her name in the first place. When she learned Kelechi had quietly married a woman rumored to be homeless, she didn't laugh like everyone else expected. She smiled, slow and calculating, the way a chess player smiles 2 moves before checkmate. "Interesting," she told her assistant. "Find out everything about this girl, where she worked, who her family is, what she's hiding. Why does it matter?" Douglas asked, only half paying attention as he scrolled through his phone. "Let the poor man play house with his charity case. Because," Chiamaka said, sipping her wine, "Kelechi Obiora doesn't do anything without a reason. If he's parading around with a homeless woman, either he's lost his mind or he's planning something. And I intend to know which before it becomes my problem." She arranged, with surgical precision, to accidentally attend the same charity gala Kelechi's company was quietly sponsoring, an event Dara had been invited to only because Emeka insisted Kelechi finally show his wife a taste of the world he actually belonged to. Dara walked into the ballroom wearing a modest navy dress, feeling like an imposter among silk gowns and diamond earrings. Chiamaka approached like a queen, greeting a servant. "So this is her," Chiamaka said, looking Dara up and down with practiced cruelty disguised as sweetness. "The famous wife. Tell me, dear, how does it feel, marrying a man everyone thought would die poor and forgotten?" "He's very much alive," Dara said evenly, "and very much loved. I don't need to know his bank balance to know his worth." Chiamaka's smile sharpened. "How poetic. Did you rehearse that on your walk here, or did poverty simply teach you good speeches?" The room around them quieted, sensing blood in the water. I didn't need poverty to teach me manners, Dara said calmly. Clearly, wealth never taught you any. A few guests actually laughed, quietly, quickly hidden behind champagne glasses. Chiamaka's composure cracked for exactly 1 second before she recovered it. Careful, little girl. You're standing in a world you don't understand yet. Then perhaps, Dara said, you should explain it to me slowly, since you clearly have so much free time to worry about a marriage that isn't yours. Chiamaka turned and walked away, heels striking the marble floor like small gunshots, her mind already spinning toward a new, darker plan. She didn't know yet that the nobody she once discarded was the very man who now controlled the loan her fiancé's biggest business deal depended on. But she was about to find out, in the most public, most devastating way possible. Small cracks began appearing in Kelechi's careful disguise. Cracks Dara could no longer explain away. When her landlord threatened to raise rent unfairly, a single phone call from Kelechi made the man apologize so profusely he nearly wept. When Dara's old coworker fell seriously ill, Kelechi arranged a hospital bed at the city's most exclusive private clinic within the hour, a place with a 2-year waiting list for ordinary citizens. Sir, everything is arranged exactly as instructed, the hospital director said, bowing slightly, sweat visible on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Sir? Dara repeated once the man left the room. Since when do doctors call dishwashing husbands, sir, like they're greeting royalty? Good service, Kelechi said quickly. Some people are naturally polite. Dara narrowed her eyes but let it go, for now. Then came the tailor shop incident. An elderly tailor, fitting Kelechi for a suit he refused to explain the purpose of, suddenly dropped his tape measure and nearly fell over himself bowing. Chairman, forgive me. I didn't realize it was you personally who required the fitting. Please, sit, let me get you tea. Chairman, Dara said slowly, watching Kelechi's face for the truth. Old men confuse titles, Kelechi said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. That night, lying awake beside the man she had married for survival and was beginning to love against every rule she'd set for herself, Dara whispered into the darkness, "Who exactly did I marry?" She didn't ask him directly. Some part of her, the part that had survived betrayal after betrayal, already suspected the answer would arrive on its own, and that when it did, it would change everything between them. She was right, and it would happen sooner and far more publicly than either of them expected. Barrister Douglas Okonjo was hosting the business event of the decade, a massive gala at the Aurelia Grand Hotel to announce his and Chiamaka's engagement officially to the city's elite, alongside a major infrastructure deal that would make his family even richer. What Douglas didn't know was that the loan securing his deal, the loan his entire financial future depended on, belonged entirely to Obiora Holdings. Kelechi almost didn't attend, but Emeka insisted. "Sir, if you don't show up tonight in your own hotel, wearing your own name, you will spend the rest of your life explaining a lie you never needed to tell." So Kelechi finally agreed, and this time he told Dara the truth about the invitation, though not the full truth about himself. "Wear this tonight," he said, presenting her with a stunning emerald gown, the first truly expensive gift he had ever given her. "Trust me, just for tonight." Dara walked into the same ballroom where Chiamaka had once mocked her, this time in silk instead of second-hand cotton. Heads turned. Whispers followed. "Isn't that the homeless girl?" someone murmured. "She scrubbed up rather well," another replied, laughing quietly. Chiamaka spotted them instantly and glided over, Douglas trailing behind her like an accessory. Well, Chiamaka said, voice dripping with sugar and venom. "The dishwasher, dressed up for a night among real people. Did you borrow that gown too, sweetheart? Or did your husband finally sell something valuable to impress everyone?" The crowd chuckled cruelly, predictably, exactly as Chiamaka intended. "Careful," Kelechi said quietly, his tone suddenly cold enough to silence the laughter. "You're standing in a building you should be far more careful discussing." Chiamaka laughed. And what would a dishwasher's husband know about? The grand doors of the ballroom swung open before she could finish. Every staff member in the room snapped instantly into formation. The hotel's general manager rushed forward so fast he nearly slipped on the marble floor, bowing deeply. "Chairman Obiora, forgive us. We did not know you would be attending personally tonight. Everything has been arranged exactly to your standing instructions, sir." The entire ballroom froze. Emeka stepped forward, clipboard in hand, addressing Kelechi with practiced formality. "Chairman, the board would like your signature on the loan review before the announcement proceeds. Barrister Okonjo's development deal requires your final approval within the hour." Silence crashed over the room like a wave. Douglas's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble. "Chairman? Obiora? Of Obiora Holdings?" Chiamaka's face drained of all color. "You," she whispered, staring at Kelechi as though seeing a ghost rise from a grave she had personally dug. "You own this hotel. You own everything." "I own this hotel," Kelechi said, voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "I own the loan that funds your fiancé's entire empire. I own 3 of the 5 companies that pay half the salaries in this room tonight." A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd like electricity. "5 years ago," Kelechi continued, eyes fixed on Chiamaka, "you told me I would never be anything. You said you needed a real man, not a boy who counted his last naira before buying bread. Tonight, you are celebrating an engagement funded entirely by the nothing you walked away from, Kelechi. Chiamaka's voice cracked, all her practiced composure finally failing her in front of the very audience she had built her reputation for. "You are still the same woman," Kelechi said quietly, "who only sees numbers where other people see human beings." He turned then, fully, deliberately, toward Dara, the woman standing beside him in silence, shock washing over her face in slow, devastating waves. "This woman," Kelechi said, his voice softening for the first time all night, married a man she believed had nothing to offer but a small flat and empty pockets. She didn't know who I truly was. Some days, I'm not sure she fully knows even now, but she treated me like a human being when the entire world treated me like dirt, including the woman standing in front of us." Dara's lips parted, tears already threatening at the edges of her eyes. "Kelechi," she whispered, "is all of this real? Everything you told me, was any of it real?" He held her gaze steadily. "Everything about you was real to me," he said. "Everything about the plan. That part, I owe you the full truth." The ballroom held its breath. Chiamaka's perfect world was collapsing in real time. But the biggest storm of the night wasn't happening in that room. It was happening quietly, painfully, in the eyes of the woman who had just discovered her entire marriage was born from a lie. The gala ended in chaos. Reporters clamoring for statements, Douglas quietly excusing himself to save face, Chiamaka disappearing into a private elevator, humiliated in front of the very society she had built her entire identity around. Back at the small flat, the one Dara had come to think of as home, a different, quieter storm was waiting. Dara sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring at Kelechi like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. "You used me," she said, voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and fury. "You let a homeless woman believe we were struggling together while you owned hospitals, hotels, banks. You let me feel proud of surviving with you when survival was never something you actually had to fight for." "Dara, don't," she said sharply. "Don't say my name like that, like it makes this smaller." "You're right to be angry," Kelechi said quietly, kneeling in front of her instead of standing over her. "I built this marriage on a lie. That part is completely true, and I won't insult you by pretending otherwise." "Then tell me the truth now," Dara said. "All of it. No more surprises falling out of hotel managers' mouths." Kelechi took a slow breath. 5 years ago, Chiamaka humiliated me in front of my own mother, called me nothing, and left the moment she found a wealthier option. I built Obiora Holdings out of that humiliation, brick by brick, deal by deal, until I had enough power that her opinion of me could never touch me again. But somewhere in all that success, I never actually healed. I just got rich enough to hide the wound. So you decided to use a stranger to finally close it, Dara said flatly. Yes, Kelechi admitted. That was the plan the night I met you. I won't lie and say otherwise. And now, Dara asked, voice breaking, what am I now that the plan is finished? Kelechi looked directly into her eyes. Now you are the only real thing that ever happened to me in 5 years of building an empire. The plan ended the night Ijeoma humiliated you in that restaurant, and I realized I was more afraid of losing you than I ever was of facing Chiamaka again. Dara shook her head, tears sliding freely now. How do I know that isn't just another convenient sentence, Kelechi? You're very good at those. Abzi because, Kelechi said. If this was still about revenge, I would have let the entire ballroom believe you were simply my charity project tonight. Instead, I told 300 of the most powerful people in this city that you were the only person who ever treated me like a human being. That wasn't for Chiamaka. That was never for Chiamaka. That was entirely for you. The silence between them stretched long, heavy, and painfully honest. I need time, Dara finally whispered. I need to know if what's growing between us is real, or if I'm simply the final scene in your revenge story. Take all the time you need, Kelechi said softly. I'm not walking away from this. I spent 5 years running from real love because I mistook it for weakness. I am done running, Dara, even if you need distance to believe that. She walked into the guest room alone that night for the first time since their wedding, closing the door quietly behind her. Somewhere behind that door, a decision was forming. One that would determine whether this marriage would survive its own true beginning. The following weeks moved slowly, carefully, like two people learning to walk again after breaking something important. Kelechi gave Dara space without abandoning her. Every morning, he still made her tea with his own hands, exactly the way he had in the small flat, though now the kitchen was larger and the tea was served on porcelain instead of a chipped mug. Every evening, he sat outside in the garden of his real home, a quiet mansion he rarely used for anything but sleep, waiting patiently, never pushing, never demanding forgiveness before it was ready to be given. Dara watched him from a distance for weeks, testing whether the humble man from the rain-soaked pavement still existed underneath the chairman's title. One evening, she found him exactly where she expected, sitting outside, alone, staring at the stars just as he had during their small, poor nights together. "You still come out here," she said quietly, sitting down beside him. "Old habits," Kelechi said. "Money changes a lot of things. It never changed this." "Ijeoma came to the gate last week," Dara said, suddenly very interested in being my sister again, now that everyone knows the truth. "What did you tell her?" "That the gate remembers exactly who threw me out in the rain," Dara said. "It doesn't forget as easily as people hope." Kelechi allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "That sounds like the same spine your mother raised." Dara turned to face him fully. "I forgive you," she said softly. "Not because you're rich, and not because the whole city now bows when you enter a room. I forgive you because I remember the man who slept on a couch so a stranger could have a bed. That man was real. Whatever came after, the title, the lie, the plan, none of that erases the nights that were true. That man is still here," Kelechi said. "He never actually left. He was just hiding under 5 years of armor." "Then take the armor off," Dara whispered. "Marry me again. Properly this time. No revenge hiding underneath it. Just us, choosing each other with nothing left to prove." Kelechi's eyes glistened, something he hadn't allowed himself in years. "That," he said quietly, "is the easiest promise I have ever made in my life. But peace rarely arrives without one final test, and Kayamaka Ume, humiliated and desperate, was not finished yet. Publicly disgraced, privately furious, Kiyamaka Ume could not simply disappear quietly. Her entire identity had been built on being untouchable, and one humiliating night had cracked that identity in front of the entire city. She arrived unannounced at Kelechi's office, brushing past his secretary with the same confidence she'd always relied on. "You could have warned me," she said, closing the door behind her. "Instead, you let me fall apart in front of 300 people. You did that to yourself the day you decided cruelty was a personality," Kelechi said calmly, not looking up from his documents. "I loved you once," Chiamaka said, softer now, trying a different approach. "You loved what I could become," Kelechi corrected. "There's a difference, and you taught it to me personally." Chiamaka's composure finally cracked completely. "So what? You found some homeless girl, and suddenly she's worth more than everything we could have built together." "She never once asked me what I owned," Kelechi said, finally looking up. "She only ever asked if I was kind. You never once asked me that in 3 years together." Chiamaka opened her mouth to respond, found nothing left to say, and walked out without another word. The last card in her hand finally spent, finally worthless, Douglas quietly ended their engagement 2 weeks later, his business empire shaken by the scandal, unwilling to be associated any further with a woman the city now openly mocked behind expensive smiles. Chiamaka Ome, the woman who once broke a poor man's heart in front of his own mother, left the city months later, no longer laughing, no longer looking down on anyone. But none of that mattered to Dara anymore. She wasn't chasing revenge. She had already won something far more valuable, a love that had survived its own lie and come out honest on the other side. The second wedding was small, by Dara's own choice. No 300 guests, no cameras chasing status. Just the people who actually mattered. The elderly tailor who once bowed in shock attended, proudly wearing a suit he'd made himself. The hospital director who had shown Dara unexpected kindness during her friend's illness came with his wife. Kelechi's mother sat in the front row, tears streaming freely. Finally, seeing her son marry someone who loved the man, not the empire, Dara wore a simple white dress, remarkably similar to the one she'd worn to their first, empty wedding, except this time, her hands were not shaking from fear. They were shaking from joy she never thought she'd be allowed to feel again. "I stand here today," Kelechi said, holding both her hands in front of everyone who mattered, not as a chairman, not as a man the newspapers call powerful, but as the same boy who was once called nothing by someone who never deserved to know him. This woman loved that boy before she ever knew about anything else. "That is the only wealth that has ever truly mattered to me." Dara smiled through happy tears. "I was the woman they threw into the rain," she said softly, her voice carrying clearly across the small, warm crowd. "Destiny gave me a home in the very last place I expected it, in the arms of a man who once had nothing to offer but honesty, and taught me that real love was never about what you own. It's about what you're finally brave enough to share." The small crowd erupted into warm, genuine applause. No hidden agendas, no revenge disguised as romance. Just two people finally beginning the marriage they had always deserved. She once sat outside a hotel with nothing but rain for company, told by the whole world she would never be chosen. Now she stands inside the warmest home in the city, not because a rich man finally noticed her, but because a broken man finally let himself be seen. Sometimes the life that throws you into the rain is only clearing space for the one that was always meant to carry you home.